One of the hallmarks of the papacy of Pope Francis is the kind of encyclicals that he writes which have an appeal to the broader human community. The message embedded in his encyclicals is largely a message that is focusing on promotion of human well-being, human communal life. And this particular encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, is no exception. In chapter 3, the Pope invites us to envisage an open world which is marked by self-transcendence and love, key words that he uses over and over again in different ways to explain the points that he wants to make. For us in Africa, as a people, this message could not have come at a more important time. The message comes at a time when Africa is grappling with a number of challenges. Poverty, the gap between the poor and the rich is ever increasing. Political instabilities, where civil wars are the order of the day. We have corruption, nepotism, people dying of disease when others are rotting in plenty. All these are signs that all is not well within the human community. And it brings to question one of the dictums that we have always been proud about. I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am. That seems to be true only in theory, but not in practice these days. We see that there is more and more individualism, more and more isolation of certain groups of persons, more and more exclusion of whole groups of people. The rights of women are no longer respected, or at least they have not yet been upheld to the standards expected. We are still hiding our disabled children. We are not yet present to the needs of the gay community, the people who have to suffer with their sexual orientations. All these are aspects that may speak to us in a particular way and invite us to open ourselves to envisage what it would be like if our world was more open, more tolerant, and more understanding of the needs, not of ourselves alone, but also of the needs of the other. So the Pope uses certain words, 2 words at least, which seem to be key, and he uses them in different ways. He uses the word self-transcendence to remind us that it's important to cherish, to preserve, and to promote fraternity, where I always see myself in the other, where I understand my needs also to be extending to the other, and the other's needs to be extending to me. The focus is not only me and my immediate family or my friends, but the human person as such, made and created in the image of God, with the same inalienable dignity and rights as myself. And that seems to be a word that the Pope emphasizes in different ways. And this, at the end of the day, he seems to underscore the fact that race, gender, geographical location, economic status, level of education, they are all accidental to the reality of the human person, and they should not define how we relate to one another and how we care and apportion the world's riches. If we envisage and engender a world that is open, we also actually manage to build another important aspect of our human living, unity. We are united as a people, not united for selfish human interests, but united in ensuring that the dream of God is fulfilled here on earth, whereby God becomes alive in our communities, whereby people are whole, they experience that shalom, unity, not as at the Tower of Babel in chapter 11 of Genesis, where people built a tower for themselves, but a tower that is built for the greater glory of God. And the greater glory of God, we know, as the centenarian said, is the human person fully alive. The other aspect that the Pope talks about, or the other key word that we see used over and over again in this encyclical, particularly in chapter 3, is love. And when he's talking about love, we do not doubt what he means, because he seems also to indicate that the only debt we should have to one another is the debt of love, always trying to surpass each other in showing honor and love. That's what even Romans chapter 8 verse 3 talks about. And by this love, we are able to confront a world that has nurtured us generally. Many of us have been born to a world where individual tribes, individual communities, individual countries care for their needs. And borders have been erected to keep out the foreigner, the stranger, who is seen as an obstacle to our own development and our own well-being. It's a distorted world, because the world that we have received in the scriptures is a world that was harmonious, that was united, a world that pleased God. There is serious questions now to that kind of vision, because even faith communities are fighting each other. Catholics against Muslims, Muslims against Protestants, Protestants against Pentecostals, even within the Christian community, even within one faith community like Catholics, we don't seem to agree. We seem to exclude each other. And these are all aspects that this encyclical helps us to focus our attention at. Love emphasizes communality. That communal personality is what seems to be the biggest take that we can make out of this encyclical, particularly in chapter 3, to all live that communal aspect, to construct our person in view of the other, that when I'm doing anything, I'm not doing it for myself, but also for the other. And then because I'm doing it for the other, and the other is doing it for me, at the end of the day, we are all going to celebrate a humanity that is harmonious, that is united, and that is developing. Africa's backwardness in terms of economic and political development is not so much for lack of resources, but so much for our fragmented approach. Every group looking it out for their own good. And this seems to be at the heart of the Pope's message, reminding us not to be self-absorbed, but to be people who are invested in the construction of the good, the common good, not only to construct it and to use it for some purposes of some few, but for the good of everyone, regardless of their zip code, regardless of their location. They can feel and identify with the nation, with the national pride, that yes, the nation is taking care of them. We are going to bequeath a nation and a continent that seems to be ever engendered in isolation. Even within our own borders, people will see them when they're building their houses, they first put up a big fence to lock out the other. And the Pope has reminded us in another encyclical to build bridges, not walls. And Africa needs to wake up to this. Our forefathers seem to understand this. During the wars of independence, independent nations always stood up for those which were still struggling. And that's how apartheid South Africa managed to win her own independence, on the feet and the shoulders of those independent African nations which continued to agitate, which continued to press forward that our brothers and sisters in South Africa should also be emancipated and they should get their independence. But see the events that came up later on in South Africa recently: xenophobia, when our brothers and sisters from other nations come to South Africa to seek greener pastures, have been turned away and some have been killed. But this is not only particular to South Africa. We see the wars in Nigeria, the wars in Cameroon, the wars in South Sudan, but also political space within our African nations. There's no opposition that is allowed. Expression of views seems to be something that is now seen as a dangerous path to tread. But all these are aspects that are showing us that we have not even started imagining and envisaging an open world where competition actually breeds healthy democracies, where people can engage in rigorous debate and still come out as brothers and sisters without demonizing each other. It is important, therefore, at this point in time, to once again broaden our reach and our imagination as a people, to look at the road to Emmaus as another example. When we welcome the stranger, he helps us to overcome some of the fears we have been engulfed in. He helps us to understand things better and maybe warm our hearts. But love actually has a ripple effect. Because these strangers, these people moving on the road, the disciples moving on the road, welcomed the stranger, they were enriched. But also the stranger was given a home to be able to spend the night. But by welcoming the gift of the stranger, the breaking of the bread opens their own eyes, dispels their fears, and they manage to go back to Jerusalem. What can happen if in Africa, from the African Union to other groups like SADC, even to SECAM as a group of African Episcopal conferences, we are able to work with each other, not to emphasize our differences, but to emphasize our commonalities. And if we are going to look at the differences, to understand them in context as differences that enrich, that create diversity and beauty. At this point in time, however, those expectations can only be met if all of us are going to invest our energy. We are going to re-educate our children to graduate out of a nurturing that taught them that they're different, to remind them that we are brothers and sisters. We can work together. Strength lies in unity, and division is only a recipe for failure and underdevelopment. May we also challenge our schools, our families, our faith communities to pass the same message. We have seen that it is possible when in Egypt and in New Zealand, extremists, Christian and Muslims, attacked faith communities. Other people formed human chains to defend the other. We can do this. And if we do this, we shall be able to live once again and proudly talk about we Africans as a people can define ourselves in the same dictum we have always prided in. I am because we are. And because we are, therefore I am. Therefore I think the purpose message is a message that reminds us to be who we are supposed to be, but also continues to encourage us to look into what is possible and not only to look at what is the problem. And may Africa be the source of beginning to live this encyclical in spirit and in truth.